Good wishes to all of you. History of Medieval India, Chapter 18, Climax and Disintegration of the Mughal Empire 1, audiobook. Problems of succession. The last years of Shah Jahan's reign were clouded by a bitter war of succession among his sons. There was no clear tradition of succession among the Muslims or the Timurids. The right of nomination by the ruler had been accepted by some Muslim political thinkers, but it could not be accepted in India during the Sultanate period. The Timurid tradition of partitioning had not been successful either and was never applied in India. Hindu traditions were also not very clear on the matter of succession. According to Tulsidas, a contemporary of Akbar, a ruler had the right to give the Tika or any one of his sons, but there were many cases among the Rajputs where such a nomination had not been accepted by the other brothers. Thus, Sangha had to wage a bitter struggle with his brothers before he could accept his claim to the Gaddi. Towards the end of 1657, Shah Jahan was taken ill at Delhi, and for some time his life was in grave danger, but he rallied and gradually recovered his strength under the loving care of Dara. Meanwhile, all kinds of rumors had gained currency. It was said that Shah Jahan had already died and Dara was concealing the reality to serve his own purposes. After some time, Shah Jahan slowly made his way by boat to Agra. Meanwhile, the princes Sujha in Bengal, Murad in Gujarat, and Aurangzeb in the Deccan had either been persuaded that these rumors were true or pretended to believe them and made preparations for the inevitable war of succession. Anxious of avert a conflict between his sons, which might spell ruin to the empire, and anticipating his speedy end, Shah Jahan now decided to nominate his eldest son Dara as his successor. Wali Ahad, he raised Dara's mansab from 40,000 jat to the unprecedented rank of 60,000. Dara was given a chair next to the throne, and all the nobles were instructed to obey Dara as their future sovereign. But these actions, far from ensuring a smooth succession as Shah Jahan had hoped, convinced the other princes of Shah Jahan's partiality to Dara. It thus strengthened their resolve to make a bid for the throne. It is not necessary for us to follow in detail the events leading to the ultimate triumph of Aurangzeb. There were many reasons for Aurangzeb's success: a divided council and underestimation of his opponents by Dara were two of the major factors responsible for Dara's defeat. On hearing of the military preparations of his sons and their decision to march on the capital, Shah Jahan had sent an army to the east led by Dara's sons Sulaiman Shikoh, aided by Mirza Raza Jai Singh, to deal with Shuja, who had crowned himself. Another army was sent to Malwa under Raja Jaswant Singh, the ruler of Jodhpur. On his arrival in Malwa, Jaswant found that he was faced with the combined forces of Aurangzeb and Murad. The two princes were intent on a conflict and invited Jaswant to stand aside. Jaswant could have retreated, but deeming retreat to be a matter of dishonor, he decided to stand and fight, though the odds were definitely against him. The victory of Aurangzeb at Dharmat, 15 April 1658, emboldened his supporters and raised his prestige, while it dispirited Dara and his supporters. Meanwhile, Dhara made a serious mistake, overconfident of the strength of his position. He had assigned to the eastern campaign some of his best troops, thus he denuded the capital Agra. Led by Sulaiman Shikoh, the army moved to the east and gave a good account of itself. It surprised and defeated Suja near Banaras, February 1658. It surprised and defeated Shuja near Banaras, Feb 1658. It then decided to pursue him into Bihar, as if the issue at Agra had already been decided. After the defeat at Dharmat, express letters were sent to these forces to hurry back to Agra. After patching up a hurried treaty, 7th May 1658, Sulaiman Sheikh started his march to Agra from his camp near Monghir in eastern Bihar, but it was hardly likely that he could return to Agra in time for the conflict with Aurangzeb. After Dharmat, Dara made frantic efforts to seek allies. He sent repeated letters to Jashwant Singh, who had retired to Jodhpur. The Rana of Udaipur was also approached. Jashwant Singh moved out Tardily to Pushkar near Asmir. After raising an army with the money provided by Dara. He waited there for the Rana to join him. But the Rana had already been won over by Aurangzeb with a promise of a rank of 7,000 and the return of the Parganas seized by Shah Jahan and Dara from him in 1654 following a dispute over the refortification of Chittor. Aurangzeb also held out to the Rana a promise of religious freedom and favors equal to those of Rana Sangha. Thus, Dara failed to win over even the important Rajput Rajas to his side. The Battle of Samughar, 29 May 1658, was basically a battle of good generalship, the two sides being almost equally matched in numbers, about 50,000 to 60,000 on each side. In this field, Dhara was no match for Aurangzeb. The other Rajputs and the Saids of Barha, upon whom Dhara largely depended, could not make up for the weakness of the rest of the hastily recruited army. Aurangzeb's troops were battle harder and well led. Aurangzeb had all along pretended that his only object behind coming to Agra was to see his allying father and to release him from the control of the heretical Dara. But the war between Aurangzeb and Dara was not between religious orthodoxy on the one hand and liberalism to the other. Both Muslims and Hindu nobles were equally divided in their support to the two rivals. We have already seen the attitude of the leading Rajput Rajas in this conflict. As in so many others, the attitude of the nobles depended upon their personal interests and their association with individual princes. After the defeat and flight of Dara, Shah Jahan was besieged in the fort of Agra. Aurangzeb forced Shah Jahan to surrender by seizing the source of water supply to the fort. Shah Jahan was confined to the female apartments in the fort and strictly supervised, though he was not ill treated. There he lived for 8 long years, lovingly nursed by his favorite doctor, Jahanara, who voluntarily chose to live within the fort. She re-emerged into public life after Shah Jahan's death and was accorded great honor by Aurangzeb, who restored her to the position of First Lady of the realm. He also raised her annual pension from 12 lakh rupees to 17 lakhs. According to the terms of Aurangzeb's agreement with Murad, the kingdom was to be patronized between the two, but Aurangzeb had no intention of sharing the empire. Hence, he treacherously imprisoned Murad and sent him to the Gwalior jail. He was killed 2 years later. After losing the battle at Samughar, Dara had fled to Lahore and was planning to retain control of its surrounding areas, but Aurangzeb soon arrived in the neighborhood leading a strong army. Dara's courage failed him. He abandoned Lahore without a fight and fled to Sindh. Thus, he virtually sealed his fate. Although the civil war dragged on for more than 2 years, its outcome was hardly in doubt. Dara's move from Sindh into Gujarat and then into Ajmer on an invitation from Jaswant Singh, the ruler of Marwar, and the subsequent treachery of the latter are too well known. The Battle of Diorai near Asmir, March 1659, was the last major battle that Dara fought against Aurangzeb. Dara might well have escaped into Iran, but he wanted to try his luck again in Afghanistan. On the way, in the Bolan Pass, a treacherous Afghan chief made him a prisoner and handed him over to his dreaded enemy. A panel of jurists decreed that Dara could not be suffered to live out of necessity to protect the faith and holy law, and also for reasons of state and as a destroyer of the public peace. This is typical of the manner in which Aurangzeb used religion as a cloak for his political motives. 2 years after Dara's execution, his son Sulaiman Shikoh, who had sought shelter with the ruler of Garhavai, was handed over by him to Aurangzeb on an imminent threat of invasion. He soon suffered the same fate as his father. Earlier, Aurangzeb had defeated Shuja at Kazwa near Allahabad, December 1658. Further campaigning against him was entrusted to Mir Jumla, who steadily exerted pressure till Shuja was hounded out of India into Arkan, April 1660. Soon afterwards, he and his family met a dishonorable death at the hands of the Arkanesi Oni charge of fomenting rebellion. The civil war, which kept the empire distracted for more than 2 years, showed that neither nominated by the ruler nor plans of division of the empire was likely to be accepted by the contenders to the throne. Military force became the only arbiter for succession, and the civil wars became steadily more destructive. After being seated securely on the throne, Aurangzeb tried to mitigate to some extent the effects of the harsh Mughal custom of war unto death between brothers. At the instance of Jahnara Begum, Spahir Shikoh, son of Dara, was released from prison in 1673, given a mansab and married to a daughter of Aurangzeb. Murad's son Izzat Baksh was also released, given a mansab and married to another daughter of Aurangzeb. Earlier in 1669, Dara's daughter Jani Begum, who had been looked after by Jahnara as her own daughter, was married to Aurangzeb's third son, Muhammad Azam. There are many other marriages between Aurangzeb's family and the children and grandchildren of his defeated brothers. Thus, in the third generation, the families of Aurangzeb and his defeated brothers become one. Aurangzeb's reason, his religious policy. Aurangzeb ruled for almost 50 years. During his long reign, the Mughal Empire reached its territorial climax. At its height, it stretched from Kashmir in the north to Jinji in the south, and from the Hindu Kush in the west to Chittagong in the east. Aurangzeb proved to be a hard-working ruler and never spared himself or his subordinates in the tasks of government. His letters show the close attention he paid to all affairs of the state. He was a strict disciplinarian who did not spare his own sons. In 1686, he imprisoned Prince Mausam on a charge of intriguing with the ruler of Golconda and kept him in prison for 12 long years. His other sons also had to face his wrath on various occasions. Such was the away of Aurangzeb that even late in his life, when Muzaham was the governor of Kabul, he trembled every time he received a letter from his father, who was then in South India. Unlike his predecessors, Aurangzeb did not like ostentation. His personal life was marked by simplicity. He had the reputation of being an orthodox, God fearing Muslim. In course of time, he began to be regarded as a Jindapir or a living saint. Historians are, however, deeply divided about Aurangzeb's achievements as a ruler. According to some, he reserved Akbar's policy of religious toleration and thus undermined the loyalty of the Hindus to the empire. According to them, this in turn led to popular uprisings which sapped the vitality of the empire. His suspicious nature added to his problem, so that, in the words of Kafi Khan, all his enterprises were long drawn out and ended in failure. Another set of historians think that Aurangzeb has been unjustly maligned and that the Hindu had become disloyal due to the laxity of Aurangzeb's predecessors, so that Aurangzeb had no option but to adopt harsh measures and to try to rally the Muslims on whose support in the long run the empire had to rest. A new trend has, however, emerged as shown in the research work on Aurangzeb. In these works, efforts have been made to assess Aurangzeb's political and religious policies in the context of social, economic, and institutional developments. There is little doubt about his being orthodox in his beliefs. He was not interested in philosophical debates or in mysticism, though he did occasionally visit Sufi saints for their blessings and did not debar his sons from dabbling in Sufism. While taking his stand on the Hanfi school of Muslim law, which had been traditionally followed in India, Aurangzeb did not hesitate to issue secular decrees called Jawabit, a compendium of his decrees and government rules and regulations had been collected in a work called Jawabit Alamgiri. Theoretically, the Jawabit supplemented the Sharia. In practice, however, they sometimes modified the Sharia in view of the conditions obtaining in India, which were not provided for in the Sharia. Thus, apart from being an Orthodox Muslim, Aurangzeb was also a ruler. He could hardly forget the political reality that the overwhelming population of India was Hindu and that they were deeply attached to their faith. Any policy which meant the complete alienation of the Hindus and of the powerful Hindu Rajas and Jamindars was obviously unworkable. In analyzing Aurangzeb's religious policy, we may take note first to what have been called moral and religious regulations. At the beginning of his reign, he forbade the inscriptions of the kalma on coins, lest a coin be trampled underfoot or be defiled while passing from hand to hand. He discontinued the festival of Nowruz as it was considered a Zoroastrian practice favored by the Safavid rulers of Iran. Muhtasibs were appointed in all the provinces. These officials were asked to see that people lived their lives in accordance with the Sharia. Thus, it was the business of these officials to see that wine and intoxication such as bhang were not consumed in public places. They were also responsible for regulating the houses of ill repute, gambling, dens, etc., and for checking weights and measures. In other words, they were responsible for ensuring that things forbidden by the Sharia and the Jawabit's secular decrees were, as far as possible, not floated openly. In appointing Muhtasib's Aurangzeb emphasized that the state was also responsible for the moral welfare of the citizens, especially the Muslims, but these officials were instructed not to interfere in the private lives of citizens. Later in the 11th year of his reign, 1669, Aurangzeb took a number of measures which have been called puritanical. They were designed to show that the emperor was opposite to all practices which were not in accordance with the Sharia or which could be considered superstitious. Some measures were of an economic and social nature. Thus, he forbade singing in the court, and official musicians were pensioned off. Instrumental music and Naubat, the royal band, were, however, continued. Singing also continued to be patronized by the ladies in the harem and by princes and individual nobles. It is of some interest to note, as has been mentioned before, that the largest number of Persian works on classical Indian music was written in Aurangzeb's region, and that Aurangzeb himself was proficient in playing the veena. Thus, Aurangzeb's jibate to the protesting musicians that they should bury the beer of music they were carrying deep under the earth, so that no echo of it may rise again, was only an angry remark. Aurangzeb discontinued the practice of Jaroka Darshan, or showing himself to the public from the balcony, since he considered it a superstitious practice and against Islam. Similarly, he forbade the ceremony of weighting the emperor against gold and silver and other articles on his birthdays. This practice, which was apparently started during Akbar's reign, had become widespread and had become a burden on the smaller nobles, but the weight of social opinion was too much. Aurangzeb had to permit his ceremony for his sons when they recovered from illness. He forbade astrologers to prepare almanacs, but the order was flouted by everybody, including members of the royal family. Many other regulations of a similar nature, some of a moral character and some to instill a sense of austerity, were issued. The throne room was to be furnished in a cheap and simple style. Clerks were to use porcelain ink stands instead of silver ones. Silk cloths were frowned upon. The gold railings in the Divan Ayam were replaced by those of lapis lazuli set on gold. Even the official department of history writing was discontinued as a measurement of economy. To promote trade among the Muslims who depended almost exclusively on state support, Aurangzeb at first largely exempted Muslim traders from the payment of cess on import of goods. But he soon found that the Muslim traders were abusing it, even passing off the goods of Hindu merchants as their own to cheat the state. So Aurangzeb reimposed the cess on Muslim traders but kept it at half of what was charged from others. Similarly, he tried to reserve the posts of peshkars and carriers, petty revenue officials for Muslims, but soon had to modify it in the face of opposition from the nobles and the lack of qualified Muslims. We may now turn our attention to some of the other measures of Aurangzeb which may be called discriminatory and displayed a sense of bigotry towards people professing other religions. The most important was Aurangzeb's attitude towards temples and the levying of jizya. At the outset of his reign, Aurangzeb reiterated the position of the Sharia regarding temples, synagogues, churches, etc. That long standing temples should not be demolished, but no new temples allowed to be built. Further, old places of worship could be repaired since buildings cannot last forever. This position is clearly spelled out in a number of extant farmans he issued to the Brahmanas of Banaras, Vrindavan, etc. Aurangzeb's order regarding temples was not a new one. It reaffirmed the position that had existed during the Sultanate period and which had been reiterated by Shah Jahan early in his reign. In practice, it gave a lot of latitude to the local officials as to the interpretation of the words. Long standing temples, the private opinion and sentiment of the ruler in the matter was also bound to wait with the officials. For example, after the rise of the liberal minded Dara as Shah Jahan's favorite, few temples had been demolished in pursuance of his order forbidding new temples. The Banaras Farman is in the National Library, Calcutta, and the Vrindavan Farman is presently in a temple at Jaipur. Aurangzeb, as governor of Gujarat, ordered a number of temples in Gujarat to be destroyed. In many cases, it meant disfiguring the images and closing down the temples. At the outset of his reign, Aurangzeb found that images in many of these temples had been restored and idol worship had been resumed. Aurangzeb therefore ordered again in 1665 that these temples be destroyed. The famous temple of Somnath, which he ordered to be destroyed earlier in his reign, was apparently one of those mentioned above. It does not seem that Aurangzeb's order regarding a ban on new temples led to a large-scale destruction of temples at the outset of the reign. Later, as Aurangzeb encountered political opposition from a number of quarters such as the Marthas, Jats, etc., he seems to have adopted a new stance in cases of conflict with local elements. He now considered it legitimate to destroy even long standing Hindu temples as a punishment and a warning. Further, he began to look upon temples as centers that spread subversive ideas, that is, ideas which were not acceptable to the orthodox elements. Thus, he took strict action when he learned in 1669 that is some of the temples in Tata, Multan, and especially at Benares, both Hindus and Muslims used to come from great distance to learn from the Brahmins. Aurangzeb issued orders to the governors of all provinces to put down such practices and to destroy the temples where such practices took place. As a result of these orders, a number of temples, such as the famous temple of Vishwanatha at Banaras and the temple of Keshavarai at Mathura, built by Bir Singh Deo Bundela in the region of Jahangir, were destroyed and mosques erected in their place. The destruction of these temples had a political motives as well. Mustaid Khan, author of the Masir-i-Alamgiri, says with reference to the destruction of the temple of Keshavarai at Mathura, on seeing this instance of the strength of the emperor's faith and the grandeur of his devotion to God, and proud Rajas were stifled and in amazement they stood like images facing the wall. It was in this context that many temples built in Odisha during the last 10 to 12 years were also destroyed. But it does not seem that there were any orders for the general destruction of temples. Mustad Khan, who wrote his history of Aurangzeb in the early 18th century and who had been closely associated with Aurangzeb, asserts that the motive behind Aurangzeb's orders was to establish Islam and that the emperor ordered the governors to destroy all temples and to ban the public practice of the religion of these misbelievers, that is, the Hindus. If Mustad Khan's version was correct, it would have meant Aurangzeb going far beyond the position of the Sharia, for the Sharia did not ban non Muslims from practicing their faiths as long as they were loyal to the ruler, etc. Nor have we found any firmans to the governors on the line suggested by Mustad Khan. However, the situation was different during periods of hostilities. Thus, during 1679 to 80, when there was war with the Rathors of Marwar and the Rana of Udaipur, many temples of old standing were destroyed at Jodhpur and its Parganas and at Udaipur. In his policy towards temples, Aurangzeb may have remained formally within the framework of the Sharia, but there is little doubt that his stand on the matter was a setback to the policy of broad toleration followed by his predecessors. It led to a climate of opinion that destruction of temples on any excuse would not only be condoned but would also be welcomed by the emperor. While we do have instances of grants to Hindu temples and maths of Aurangzeb, on the whole, the atmosphere generated by Aurangzeb's policy towards Hindu temples was bound to create disquiet among large sections of Hindus. However, it seems that Aurangzeb's zeal for the destruction of temples abated after 1679, for we do not hear of any large scale destruction of temples in the south between 1681 and his death in 1707, but a new irritant, the jizya or the poll tax, was introduced in the interval. We have already explained the background of the jizya and its introduction in India by the Arab and Turkish rulers. According to the Sharia, in a Muslim state, the payment of jizya was obligatory wajib for the non-Muslims. Akbar had abolished it for reasons that we have noted. However, a section of Orthodox theologians had been agitating for the revival of jizya so that the superior position of Islam, including that of the theologians, could be made manifest to all. We are told that after accession to the throne, Aurangzeb contemplated reviving the jizya on a number of occasions, but did not do so for fear of political opposition. Ultimately, in 1679, in the 22nd year of his reign, he finally reimposed it. There has been considerable discussion among historians regarding Aurangzeb's motives for this step. Let us first see what it was not. It was not means to be an economic pressure forcing the Hindus to convert to Islam for its incidence was light. Women, children, the disabled and the indigent, that is, those whose income was less than the means of subsistence, were exempted, as were those in governmental service. Nor, in fact, did any significant section of Hindus change their religion in earlier times due to this tax? Secondly, it was not a means of meeting a difficult financial situations. Although the income from jizya is said to have been considerable, Aurangzeb has sacrificed a considerable sum of money by giving up a large number of cesses called adverbs which were not sanctioned by the Sharia and were hence considered illegal. However, the money from jizya did not go to the royal treasury but was earmarked for use by the theological classes. The reimposition of jizya was, in fact, both political and ideological in nature. It was meant to rally the Muslims for the defense of the state against the Marathas and the Rajputs who were up in arms and possibly against the Muslim states of the Deccan, especially Golconda, which was an alliance with the infidel Marathas. Moreover, jizya was to be collected by honest, God fearing Muslims who were especially appointed for the purpose, and its proceeds were reserved for the ulama. It was thus a big bribe to the theologians, among whom there was a lot of unemployment, but the disadvantages outweighed the possible advantages of this step. It was bitterly resented by the Hindus who considered it a mark of discrimination. Its mode of collection also had some negative features. The payer was required to pay it personally, and sometimes he suffered humiliation at the hands of theologians in the process. Since in the rural areas jizya was collected along with the land revenue, well to do Hindus in the cities were affected more by these practices. We therefore hear of a number of occasions when Hindu traders shut their shops and observed hardship against the measure. Also, there was a lot of corruption, and in a number of instances, the emir or collector of jizya was killed. But Aurangzeb was unrelented unrelenting and was reluctant to grant a exemption from jizya to the peasants, even when remission in land revenue had to be given on account of natural calamities. Finally, he had to suspend jizya in 1705 for the duration of the war in the south, for which no end was in sight. This could hardly influence his negotiations with the Marathas. Gradually, jizya fell into disuse all over the country. It was formally abolished in 1712 by Aurangzeb's successors. Some modern writers are of the opinion that Aurangzeb's measures were designed to convert India from a Dar ul Harb or a land of infidels into Dar ul Islam or a land inhabited by Muslims. But this has no basis. In fact, a state in which the laws of Islam prevailed and where the ruler was a Muslim is Dar ul Islam. In such a state, the Hindus who submitted to the Muslim ruler and agreed to pay jizya were zimmis or protected people according to the Sharia. Hence, the state in India had been considered a Darul Islam since the advent of the Turks. Even when Mahadji Sindhya, the Maratha general, occupied Delhi in 1772 and the Mughal Emperor became a puppet in his hands, the theologians decreed that the state remained a Dar ul Islam since the laws of Islam were allowed to prevail and the throne was occupied by a Muslim. Although Aurangzeb considered it legitimate to encourage a conversion to Islam, evidence of systematic or large scale attempts at forced conversion is lacking. Nor were Hindu nobles discriminated against. A rent study had shown that the number of Hindus in the nobility during the second half of Aurangzeb's reign steadily increased till the Hindus, including Marathas, formed about one third of the nobility as against one fourth under Shah Jahan. On one occasion, Aurangzeb wrote a petition in which a post was claimed on religious grounds. What connection and what right have worldly affairs with a religion? And what right have matters of religion to enter into bigotry? For you is your religion, for me is mine. If this rule suggested by you were established, it would be my duty to extirpate all Hindu Rajas and their followers. This Aurangzeb's attempt was not so much to change the nature of the state but to reassert its fundamentally Islamic character. Aurangzeb's religious beliefs cannot be considered the basis of the political policies. The conversion of large sections of the population to Islam in Kashmir had taken place apparently during the 14th 15th centuries, as has been noted in an earlier chapter. While as an Orthodox Muslim, he was distressed of upholding the strict letter of the law. As a ruler, he was keen to strengthen and expand the empire. Hence, he did not want to lose the support of the Hindus to the extent possible. However, his religious ideas and beliefs on the one hand and his political or public policies on the other clashed with each other on many occasions, so that Aurangzeb was faced with difficult choices. Sometimes this led him to adopt contradictory policies which harmed the empire. Political developments North India. During the War of Succession, many local jamindars and rajas had withheld revenue or started plundering the neighboring areas, including Mughal territories and royal highways. After seating himself on the throne formally, Aurangzeb embarked upon an era of strong rule. In some cases, such as the northeast and the Deccan, the imperial frontier was advanced. However, in general, Aurangzeb did not embark upon a forward policy. His first attempt immediately after his succession was to reassert imperial authority and prestige. This included the recovery of areas which had been lost during the War of Succession and to which the Mughals felt they had legal claim. To begin with, Aurangzeb was more concerned with consolidation than conquest and annexation. Thus, he sent an army to Bikaner to enforce obedience to the Mughal emperor but made no effort to annex it. But in other cases, such as Palama in Bihar, the ruler who was accused of disloyalty was disposed and the bulk of his state annexed. The rebel Bundela chief Champat Rai, who had been an ally of Aurangzeb at first but had taken to a life of plunder, was relentlessly hunted down. But Bundela lands were not annexed. Northeastern East India. We have mentioned in an earlier chapter the rise of Ahom power in Assam Valley and their conflict with the rulers of Kamatha, Kamrup on the one hand and with the Afghan rulers of Bengal on the other. The kingdom of Kamatha declined by the end of the 15th century and was replaced by the kingdom of Kuch Bihar, which dominated North Bengal and the western Assam and which continued the policy of conflict with the Ahoms. However, internal disputes led to the division of the kingdom in the early 17th century and to the entry of the Mughals in Assam at the instance of the Kush ruler. The Mughals defeated the split away kingdom and in 16th wall occupied the western Assam valley up to the Bar Nadi with the help of Kuch armies. The Kush ruler became a Mughal vassal. Thus, the Mughals came into contact with the Ahoms who ruled eastern Assam across the Bar Nadi. After a long war with the Ahoms, who had harbored a prince of the defeated dynasty, a treaty was made with them at last in 1638, which fixed the Bar Nadi as the boundary between them and the Mughals. Thus, Guwahati came under Mughal control. There was a long drawn out war between the Mughals and the Ahoms during the reign of Aurangzeb. The war began with the attempt of the Ahom rulers to expel the Mughals from Guwahati and the neighboring area and thus complete their control over Assam. Mir Jumla, who had been appointed the governor of Bengal by Aurangzeb, wanted to make his mark by bringing Cooch Behar and the entire Assam under Mughal rule. He first assaulted Cooch Behar, which had repudiated Mughal sovereignty and annexed the entire kingdom to the Mughal Empire. He next invaded the Ahom kingdom. Mir Jumla occupied the Ahom capital Gargaon and held it for 6 months. Next, he penetrated up to the limit of the Ahom kingdom, finally forcing the Ahom king to make a humiliating treaty. 1663, the Raja had to send his doctor to Mughal harem, pay a larger war indemnity, and an annual tribute of 20 elephants. The Mughal boundary was extended from the Bhar Nadi to the Barali river. Mir Jumla died soon after his brilliant victory. However, the advantages of a forward move in Assam were doubtful since the area was not rich and was surrounded by warlike tribes such as the Nagas living in the mountains. It was found that the back of Ahom power had not been broken, and that is that it was beyond Mughal power to enforce the treaty. In 1667, the Ahoms renewed the context. They not only recovered the areas ceded to the Mughals but also occupied Guwahati. Earlier, the Mughals had also been expelled from Cooch Behar. Thus, all the gains of Mir Jumla were rapidly lost. A long desultory warfare with the Ahoms lasting a decade and a half followed. For a long period, the command of the Mughal forces was with Raja Ram Singh, the ruler of Amber, but he hardly had the resources for the task. Finally, the Mughals had to give up even Guwahati and to fix a boundary west of it. The events in Assam showed the limits of Mughal power in far flung areas and also the skills and determination of the Ahoms, who avoided pitched battles and adopted a mode of guerrilla warfare. Similar tactics were to be adopted with similar success by the opponents of the Mughals in other areas. However, the shock of the Mughal invasion and the subsequent warfare undermined the strength of the Ahom monarchy and led to the decline and disintegration of the Ahom Empire. The Mughals had more success elsewhere. Sashta Khan, who succeeded Mir Jumla as the governor of Bengal after his setback at the hands of Shivaji, proved to be a good administrator and an able general. He modified Mir Jumla's forward policy. First, he patched up an agreement with the ruler of Cooch Behar. Next, he turned his attention to the problem of South Bengal, where the Magh Arkanisi pirates had been terrorizing the area up to Dhaka from their headquarters at Chittagong. The land up to Dhaka had become desolate and trade and industry had suffered a setback. Sister Khan built up a navy to meet the Arkanesi pirates and capture the islands of Sondhip as a base of operations against Chittagong. Next, he won the firings to his side by inducements of money and favors. The Arakan navy near Chittagong was routed and many of their ships captured. Chittagong was next assaulted and captured early in 1666. The destruction of the Arkanesi navy opened the seas to free commerce. This was no minor factor in the rapid growth of Bengal's foreign trade during the period and the expansion of cultivation in East Bengal. In Odisha, the rebellion of the Pathans was put down and Balsore reopened to commerce. Popular revolts and movements for regional independence, Jats, Afghans, and Sikhs. Within the empire, Aurangzeb had to deal with a number of difficult political problems, such as the problems of the Marathas in the Deccan, Deccan, the Jats and Rajputs in North India, and that of the Afghans and Sikhs in the northwest. Some of these problems were not new and had to be faced by Aurangzeb's procedures, but they assumed a different character under Aurangzeb. The nature of these movements also varied. In the case of the Rajputs, it was basically a problem of succession. In the case of the Marathas, it was a question of local independence. The clash with the Jats had a peasant agrarian background. The only moment in which religion played a powerful role was the Shakti movement, Sikh movement. Both the Jat and the Sikh movements ultimately culminated in setting up independent regional states. The struggle of the Afghans was tribal in character, but there too the sentiment of setting up a separate Afghan state was at work. These economic and social factors, as well as the sentiment of regional independence, which continued to be strong, were major factors in shaping these movements. Religion also played an undoubted role. It has sometimes been argued that all these movements, excluding the Afghan one, represented a Hindu reaction against Aurangzeb's narrow religious policies. In a country where the overwhelming section of the people consisted of Hindus, any movement which came into conflict with a predominantly Muslim central government could be dubbed a challenge to Islam. Likewise, the leaders of these rebel movements could use religions, slogans, or symbols to broaden their appeal. Hence, religion must be seen as part of societal and political movements. Jackson Satnamis, the first section to come into conflict with the Mughal government, were the Jats of the Agra Delhi region living on both sides of the river Yamuna. The Jats were mostly peasant cultivators, only a few of them being jamindars with a strong sense of brotherhood and justice. The Jats had often come into conflict with the government and taken to rebellion, taking advantages of their difficult terrain. Thus, conflict with the Jats of the area had taken place during the reigns of Jahangir and Shah Jahan over collection of land revenue. Since the imperial route to the Deccan and the western seaports passed through the Jat area, the Mughal government had taken a serious view of these rebellions and taken stern measures. In 1669, the Jats of the Mathura region broke out in rebellion under the leadership of a local Jamindar, Gokla. The rebellion spread rapidly among the peasants of the area, and Aurangzeb decided to march in person from Delhi to quell it. Although the Jat levies had swelled to 20,000, there were no match for the organized imperial army. In a stiff battle, the Jats were defeated. Gokla was captured and executed. However, the movement was not completely crushed and discontent continued to simmer. Meanwhile, in 1672, there was another armed conflict between the peasants and the Mughal state at Narnaul, not far from Mathura. This time, the conflict was with a religious body called Satnamis. The Satnamis were mostly peasants, artisans, and low caste people called goldsmiths, carpenters, sweepers, tanners, and other ignoble beings by a contemporary writer. They did not observe distinction of caste and rank or between Hindus and Muslims, and followed a strict code of conduct starting from a clash with a local official. It soon assumed the character of an open rebellion. Again, the emperor had to march in person to crush it. It is interesting to note that the local Hindu jamindars, many of whom were Rajput, sided with the Mughals in this conflict. In 1685, there was a second uprising of the Jats under the leadership of Rajaram. The Jats were better organized this time and adopted the methods of guerrilla warfare, combining it with plunder. Aurangzeb approached Raja Bishan Singh, the Kachwaha ruler, to crush the uprising. Bishan Singh was appointed Fauzdar of Mathura and the entire area was granted to him in Jamindari. Conflict between the Jats and the Rajputs over Jamindari rights complicated the issue, with most of the primary Jamindars, that is, the cultivating peasants who owned the land, being Jats, and the intermediary Jamindars, that is, those who collected the land revenue, being Rajputs. The Jats put up stiff resistance, but by 1691, Rajaram and his successor Choraman were compelled to submit. However, unrest among the Jat peasants continued, and their plundering activities made the Delhi Agra road unsafe for travelers. Later in the 18th century, taking advantage of Mughal civil wars and weakness in the central government, Chorman was able to carve out a separate Jat principality in the area and to oust the Rajput Jamindars. Thus, what apparently started as a peasants' uprising changed its character and culminated in a state in which Jat chiefs formed the ruling class. The Afghans. Aurangzeb came into conflict with the Afghans also. Conflict with the hardy Afghan tribesmen who lived in the mountain region between the Punjab and the Kabul was not new. Akbar had to fight against the Afghans and in the process lost his close friend and confidant Raja Birbal. Conflict with the Afghan tribesmen had taken place during the reign of Shah Jahan also. These conflicts were partly economic and partly political and religious. With little means of livelihood in the rugged mountains, the Afghans had no option but to prey on the caravans or to enroll in the Mughal armies. Their first love of freedom made service in the Mughal armies difficult. The Mughals generally kept them content by paying them subsidies, but growth of population or the rise of an ambitious leader could lead to a breach of this tactic agreement. During the reign of Aurangzeb, we see a new stirring among the Pathans. In 1667, Bhagu, the leader of the Yusufzai tribe, proclaimed as king a person named Muhammad Shah who claimed descent from an ancient royal lineage and proclaimed himself his wazir. It would appear that among the Afghans, as among the Jats, the ambition of setting up a separate state of their own had begun to stir. A religious revivalist movement called the Raushani, which emphasized a strict ethical life and devotion to a chosen peer, had provided an intellectual and moral background to the movement. Gradually, Bhagu's movement spread till his followers started ravaging and plundering the Hazra, Attock, and Peshawar districts and brought the traffic in the Khyber to a standstill. To clear the Khyber and crush the uprising, Aurangzeb deputed the chief Bakshi, Amir Khan. A Rajput contingent was posted with him. After a series of hard fought battles, the Afghan resistance was broken, but to watch over them in 1671, Maharaja Jaswant Singh, the ruler of Marwar, was appointed as Tanedar of Jamrud. There was a second Afghan uprising in 1672. The leader of the opposition this time was the Afridi leader Akmal Khan, who proclaimed himself king and read the Kutba and struck coins in his name. He declared war against the Mughals and summoned all the Afghans to join him. According to a contemporary writer with a following more numerous than ants and locusts, they closed the Khyber Pass, moving forward to clear the pass. Amir Khan advanced too far and suffered a disastrous defeat in the narrow defile. Amir Khan managed to escape with his life, but 10,000 men perished, and cash and goods worth 2 crores were looted by the Afghans. This defeat brought other tribesmen into the fray, including Kushlal Khan Takhtak, a sworn enemy of Aurangzeb at whose hands he had suffered imprisonment for some time. In 1674, another Mughal noble, Sujat Khan, suffered a disastrous rout in the Khyber, but he was rescued by a heroic band of Rathod sent by Jaswant Singh. At last, in the middle of 1674, Aurangzeb himself went to Peshawar and remained in the neighborhood till the end of 1675. By forcing and diplomacy, the Afghan united front was broken and peace was slowly restored. The Afghan uprising shows that sentiments of resistance to the Mughal rule and the arg for regional freedom were not confined at sections of Hindus such as Jats, Marthas, etc. Also, the Afghan uprising helped to relax the Mughal pressure on Shivaji during a crucial period. It also made difficult, if not impossible, a forward policy by the Mughals in the Deccan till 1676, by which time Shivaji had crowned himself and entered into an alliance with Bijapur and Golconda. The Sikhs. Although there had been some clashes between the Sikh Guru and the Mughals under Shah Jahan, there was no clash between the Sikhs and Aurangzeb till 1675. In fact, conscious of the growing importance of the Sikhs, Aurangzeb had tried to engage Ram Rai, the elder son of Guru Har Rai, at the court. However, Guru Har Rai was displeased with Ram Rai and nominated as his successor a younger son, Har Krishnan, who was only 6 years old at the time. Har Krishnan died soon after and was succeeded in 1664 by Guru Tegh Bahadur. Ram Rai put forward his claims to the Ghathi both before the accession of Guru Har Krishnan and after his death. Aurangzeb did not interfere and gave a grant of land at Dehradun to Ram Rai to build his Gurudwar there. But most of the time, Ram Rai remained at Delhi and continued to intrigue against the Guru and tried to poison the mind of the emperor against him. After his succession, Guru Tegh Bahadur had come to Delhi, but to escape the intrigues of Ram Rai, he journeyed to Bihar and served with Raja Ram Singh of Amber in Assam till 1671. However, in 1675, Guru Tegh Bahadur was brought to Delhi from his headquarters with five of his followers. Various accusations were made against him, and he was asked to recant his faith, which he refused. As a punishment, he was beheaded. Various reasons have been put forward to account for Aurangzeb's action. According to a poetic work by Guru Gobind Singh, the son and successor of Guru Tegh Bahadur, he gave up his life in defense of the Hindu faith following his meeting with some Brahmins of Kashmir who had sought his support. However, we do not have any details of this meeting. According to a separate and later tradition, the Guru was protesting against the oppression of the oppression of the governor of Kashmir, Sher Afghan, and the forcible conversion of Hindus there. However, the Mughal governor of Kashmir till 1671 was Saif Khan. He is famous as a builder of bridges. He was a liberal and broad-minded person who had appointed him Hindu to advise him on matters of administration. His successor after 1671 was Iftekhar Khan. He was anti-Shia, but there are no references of his persecution of Hindus. In fact, this is not mentioned in any of the local histories of Kashmir, including one written by Narayan Kaul in 1710. There is another tradition that believes that the Guru was beheaded because some of the enemies and rivals of Guru Tegh Bahadur, such as Ram Rai, had suggested to Aurangzeb that he should ask the Guru to show a miracle to prove his claim of divine powers, and that action could be taken against him if he failed to do so. But this does not appear likely. Aurangzeb had been out of Delhi from the beginning of 1675 to March 1676 in pursuit of action against the Afghan rebels. Hence, he could not have called the Guru to Delhi at the suggestion of Ram Rai. An explanation had been put forward by later Persian sources, which appeared to be a defense of the official action. It has been said that the Guru, who had a large following, moved about the Punjab in association with one Hafiz Adam, who was a follower of Shaikh Ahmad Srihindi, extorting money by force from the villagers. It is further said that the local Wakia Navis or intelligence reporter told the emperor that if action was not taken against the Guru, it could lead to disturbances and even to a rebellion. We do not know the sources of the Persian account. It mentions Hafiz Adam as an associate of the Guru, but Hafiz Adam had died much earlier. Also, the execution of the Guru is placed at Lahore, not Delhi. An account does, however, say that the Guru was executed at the orders of the emperor. It would appear that for Aurangzeb, the beheading of the Guru was primarily a law and order question. However, according to another Persian source, whenever any peasants came into conflict with a local revenue collection collector, Jagirdar or Zamindar, they resorted to the Guru who looked after them. Thus, far from extorting money by force from the peasants as alleged, the Guru was emerging as a champion against injustice and oppression. An atmosphere of heightened religious tensions had been brought about in large measures by Aurangzeb's emphasis on the Sharia, his destruction of newly built temples, and even of some temples of old standing as punishment for local rebellions or complaints by the Qazis who disapproved of temples opening their doors and teachings to Muslims also. In such a situation, any conflict with a distinguished religious leader was bound to have larger repercussions. Whatever the reasons, Aurangzeb's action was unjustified from any point of view and betrayed a narrow approach. The execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur forced the Sikhs to go back to the Punjab hills. It also led to the Sikh movement gradually turning into a military brotherhood. A major contribution in this sphere was made by Guru Gobind Singh. He showed considerable organizational ability and founded the military brotherhood or the Khalsa in 1699. Before this, Guru Gobind Singh had made his headquarters at Makhawal or Anandpur in the foothills of the Punjab. At first, the local Hindu hill Rajas had tried to use the Guru and his followers in their internecine quarrels, but soon the Guru became too powerful and a series of clashes took place between the hill Rajas and the Guru, who generally trumped the organization of the Khalsa further strengthened the hands of the Guru in this conflict. However, an open breach between the Guru and the hill Rajas took place only in 1704 when the combined forces of a number of hill Rajas attacked the Guru at Anandpur. The Rajas had again to retreat and they pressed the Mughal government to intervene against the Guru on their behalf. The struggle which followed was thus not primarily a religious struggle, it was partly an offshoot of local rivalries among the Hindu hill Rajas and the Sikhs, and partly an outcome of the Sikh movement as it had developed. Aurangzeb was concerned about the growing power of the Guru and had earlier asked the Mughal Fauzdar to admonish the Guru. He now wrote to the governor of Lahore and the Fauzdar of Sirhind, Wazir Khan, to aid the hill Rajas on their conflict with Guru Gobind Singh. The Mughal forces assaulted Anandpur, but the Sikhs fought bravely and beat off all assaults. The Mughals and their allies now invested the fort closely. When starvation began inside the fort, the Guru was forced to open the gate, apparently on a promise of safe conducted by Wazir Khan. But when the forces of the Guru were crossing a swollen stream, Wazir Khan forces suddenly attacked. Two of the Guru's sons were captured and on their refusal to embrace Islam were beheaded at Sirhind. The Guru lost two of his remaining sons in another battle. After this, the Guru retired to Talwandi and was generally not disturbed. It is doubtful whether the dastardly action of Wazir Khan against the sons of the Guru was carried out at the instance of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, it seems, was not keen to destroy the Guru and wrote to the governor of Lahore to conciliate the Guru. When the Guru wrote to Aurangzeb in the Deccan, apprising him of the events, Aurangzeb invited him to meet him Towards the end of 1706, the Guru set out for the Deccan and was on the way when Aurangzeb died. According to some, he had hoped to persuade Aurangzeb to restore Anandpur to him. Although Guru Gobind Singh was not able to withstand the Mughal might for long or to establish a separate Sikh state, he created a tradition and also forged a weapon for its realization later on. It also showed how a egalitarian religious movements could, under certain circumstances, turn into a political and militaristical movement and subtly move towards regional independence. Relations with the Rajputs breached with Marwar and Mewar. We have seen how Jahangir settled in 1613 the long drawn out conflict with Mewar. Jahangir continued Akbar's policy of granting favors to the leading Rajput Rajas and of entering into matrimonial relations with them. Shah Jahan maintained the alliance with the Rajputs during his reign. Rajput contingents served with distinction in such far flung areas as the Deccan, Balkan, Central Asia, and Kandahar. However, no Rajput Raja was appointed governor of a province, and no further matrimonial relations were made with the leading Rajput Rajas. Though Shah Jahan himself was the son of a Rathod princess, perhaps alliances with the Rajputs having been consolidated, it was felt that matrimonial relations with the leading Rajas were no longer necessary. However, Shah Jahan accorded high honor to the heads of the two leading Rajputs houses, Jodhpur and Amber. Raja Jashwant Singh, the ruler of Marwar, was high in Shah Jahan's favor. Both he and Jai Singh held the ranks of 7,000 by 7,000 at the time of Aurangzeb's accession. Aurangzeb attached great value to the alliance with the Rajputs. He tried to secure the active support of the Maharana of Mewar and raised his mansab from 5,000 by 5,000 to 6,000 by 6,000. Although Jaswant Singh had fought against him at Dharmat and defected from his side during the campaign against Shuja and invited Dhara to his dominance, Aurangzeb pardoned him and restored him to his previous mansab. He was also appointed to important commands, including the governorship of Gujarat. Jai Singh remained a close friend and confidant of Aurangzeb till his death in 1667. Jashwant Singh, who had been deputed to look after the affairs of the Afghans in the northwest, died towards the end of 1678. The Maharaja had no survivable male issue, and hence the question of succession to the Gadi immediately arose. There was a long standing Mughal tradition that in case of a disputed succession, the state was brought under Mughal administration, Khalisa, to ensure law and order, and then handed over to the chosen successor. Thus, in 1650, when there was a dispute about succession in Jaisalmer, Shah Jahan first took the state under Khalisa and then sent Jashwant Singh at the head of an army to install a candidate chosen by the emperor. Tradition persists in naming Jodha Bhai as the mother of Jahangir, but the only marriage of a Rathod princess we know of was the marriage in 1585 of the daughter of Muta Raja Uday Singh with Salim Jahangir. She was called Mani Bhai. Her second name was Jodha Bhai. She was the mother of Shah Jahan. There was another reason also for bringing Marwar under the Khalsa. The Maharaja, like most Mughal nobles, had large sums of money due to the state which he had not been able to pay back. Many Rajputs whom Jashwant Singh had annoyed or whose territories had been granted to him in Jagir by the emperor were eager to use the absence of a ruler on the Gadi of Jodhpur to create disturbances. Anticipating resistance from the Rathods, Aurangzeb had allotted to Parganas in Marwar for the maintenance of the family and supporters of Jashwant Singh. He also assembled a strong army and marched to Ajmer to enforce his orders. Rani Hadi, the chief queen of Jashwant Singh, who had been objecting to handing over charge of Jodhpur to the Mughals, since it was the Watan homeland of the Rathods, had no option but to submit. A diligent search was not made for any hidden treasures that Jashwant Singh might have possessed. Mughal officials were posted all over Marwar. Large numbers of temples, including old temples, were demolished or bricked up. Thus, the Mughals behaved as conquerors and treated Marwars as hostile territory. However, Aurangzeb had no intention of retaining control of the territory of Marwar on account of its strategic importance and linking Delhi with the Gujarat seaports, as has been accepted by the modern historian Jagnath Sarkar. Two sons were born at Lahore to Ranis of Jashwant Singh after his death. Their claim to the Gaddis was strongly canvassed. However, before returning to Delhi, Aurangzeb decided to award the Tika of Jodhpur to Inder Singh, the grandson of Jashwant Singh's elder brother, Amar Singh, in return for a succession fee of 36 lakhs of rupees. Perhaps Aurangzeb was moved by the argument that Shah Jahan had done a great injustice in passing over the claims of Amar Singh. In giving the ticket to his younger brother Jashwant Singh, he may also have wanted to avoid a minority administration in Marwar. According to some modern historians, Aurangzeb offered Jodhpur to Ajit Singh, the posthumous son of Jashwant Singh, on condition of his becoming a Muslim. There is no such suggestion in contemporary sources. According to a contemporary Rajasthani work, Hukumatri Bhahi, Aurangzeb offered a mansab to Ajit Singh when he was presented at the court in Agra and declared that the two parganas in Marwar, Sojat and Jaitharan, would continue as his Jagir. Thus, Aurangzeb was virtually contemplating a division of the state of Marwar between the two branches of the family. The Rathore Sardars, led by Durgadas, rejected this proffered compromise, which they felt would be against the best interests of the state. Angered at the rejection of his offered by the Sardars, Aurangzeb ordered that the princes and their mothers be put in confinement at the fort of Nurghar. This alarmed the Rathore Sardars, who, after the valiant fight, made their escape from Agra along with one of the princes and crowned him as Ajit Singh at Jodhpur amidst great rejoicing. Aurangzeb might have gracefully accepted the fact that Inder Singh had no following among the Rathors. He set aside Inder Singh for incompetence but adopted his stern, unbending attitude towards Ajit Singh, declaring him a pretender. Strong forces were summoned from all parts of the empire, and once again Aurangzeb marched to Ajmer. The Rathore resistance was crushed and Jodhpur occupied. Durgadas fled with Ajit Singh to Mewar, where the Rana sent him to a secret hideout. It was at this stage that Mewar entered the war on the side of Ajit Singh. Rana Raj Singh, who at one stage had supported Aurangzeb, had been gradually alienated. He had sent a force of 5,000 men under one of his leading men to Jodhpur to back up the Haim of Rani Hadi. Apparently, he was deeply opposed to Mughal interference in the internal affairs of the Rajputs, such as questions of succession. Apart from this, he nursed a grievance at Mughal efforts to detach from Mewar the states to its south and west, Dhangarpur, Banswar, etc., which had been at one time tribute paying dependent rulers under Mewar, but the immediate cause was his unease at the Mughal military occupation of Marwar and Aurangzeb's rejection of Ajit Singh's claim of succession. Aurangzeb struck the first blow in November 1679. He attacked Mewar. A strong Mughal detachment reached Udaipur and even raided the camp of the Rana, who had retreated deep into the hills to conduct a harassing warfare against the Mughals. The war soon reached a stalemate. The Mughals could neither penetrate the hills nor deal with the guerrilla tactics of the Rajputs. The war now became highly unpopular. Aurangzeb's admonitions and warnings to his commanders having little effect. At last, the eldest son of Aurangzeb, Prince Akbar, tried to take advantage of his situation by turning his arms against his father. In alliance with the Rathore chief Durgadas, he marched to on Ajmer. January 1681, where Aurangzeb was helpless, all his best troops being engaged elsewhere. But Prince Akbar delayed, and Aurangzeb was able to stir up dissensions in his camp by false letters. Prince Akbar had to flee to Maharashtra, and Aurangzeb heaved a sing of relief. The campaign of Mewar now became secondary for Aurangzeb. He patched up a treaty with Rana Jagat Singh. Rana Raj Singh having died in the meantime. The new Rana was forced to surrender some of his parganas in lieu of jizya and was granted a mansab of 5,000 on a promise of loyalty and of not supporting Ajit Singh. Regarding Ajit Singh, all that Aurangzeb would promise was that mansab and Raj would be given to him when he came of age. This agreement and the promise regarding Ajit Singh satisfied none of the Rajputs. The Mughals kept their control on Marwar, and desultory warfare continued till 1698 when at last Ajit Singh was recognized as the ruler of Marwar. But the Mughals refused to relax their hold on the capital Jodhpur. The Rana of Mewar too remained dissatisfied at the surrender of his parganas to the Mughals. There was no change in this situation till Aurangzeb died in 1707. Aurangzeb's policy towards Marwar and Mewar was clumsy and blundering and brought no advantage of any kind to the Mughals. On the other hand, Mughal failure against these states damaged Mughal military prestige. It is true that the warfare in Marwar after 1681 involved only a few troops and was not of much consequences militarily. It is also true that Hada and Kachwaha and other Rajput contingents continued to serve the Mughals. But the results of the Marwar policy of Aurangzeb cannot be judged solely by these. The breach with Marwar and Mewar weakened the Mughal alliance with the Rajputs at the crucial time. Above all, it created doubts about the firmness of Mughal support to old and trusted allies and the ulterior motives of Aurangzeb. It showed the rigid and obstinate nature of Aurangzeb. It did not, however, amount to a fixed determination on his part to subvert Hinduism and has been alleged because during the period after 1679, large numbers of Marathas were allowed entry into the nobility. Aurangzeb's conflicts in the northeast and with the Jats, Afghans, Sikhs, and Rajputs put a strain on the empire. However, the real conflict lay in the Deccan. Thank you.